Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Zimbabwe's culture of political violence is a serious problem. And when you listen to some of these ZANU-PF operatives, that's when you realize the seriousness of that problem. Here is a young man somewhere in Kokwe. Can have a quick listen to him.
Pass man. Kana wina sabu gadza ari we MDC. Ndomvi. Izolo. Kona mangwana. Kwaita zvazo kumbofunga. Kana usingadi kubva uchida sabu wako yo pera zanpia. Zapera. Ende kana wakuno vota ugonunyora. Izvi ndataura pachena naye. Ndonyaya ndakazitaure pachena kuti muzive ngati takatosaina takabvuma document rakabva kuna president last week on Thursday ndokatakasaina izvo and hatigoni kuzviramba because it was an order kutungamira musangano izvo zvabva kuna president ungazvitiwa handizvidi izvo zvabva kuna president unozviramba uchiti kuti kana wazviramba utoza.
There we have it. The thing here is the young man is even boasting about it. Totally indifferent to the consequences of his actions. He's boasting that if you are a headman and you support the opposition, you either give up the position or you join ZANU-PF. And for the villagers, when it comes to voting, you'll pretend that you can't read and write so that you can have somebody attached to you. This is the reality in Zimbabwe, the political reality. Some, of course, have done a lot worse. And this is an example of somebody who has done a lot worse. This is an old man. Well, he's not that old.
Hope hatisi kuuya kana ndiri kumba saka dambudziko rangu ndikutsvaga rubatsiro kuvanhu vezimbabwe kuti vandibatsirewo semwana wenyu mundibatsirewo ndigone kurarama. Tarisai zvandikuita izvi hazvina mufaro. Ndakauraya vanhu 6. Inini ndiri mwana wako Kapere.
Kupi?
Kwamanyika.
Ekupiko?
Kuzumba. Kwamurewa.
Oh. Vakauraire.
Takatumwa nemusangano.
Musangano wei?
WeZANU-PF.
Ndiani akanga akutuma?
Ndori yakabaya njiri, anga ari senator wedu, anga ari MP.
Hey. Saka vanhu vari kuuya kupi? Vari kuuya kupi? Kupi?
So here's another case of somebody confessing that he has murdered 6 people instructed by ZANU-PF. And one can therefore understand who inspired this cartoon. And it's not an exaggeration, it is based on reality. In Zimbabwe, this is the political culture we are facing, where people have been literally brainwashed to the point of somebody has taken off their brain completely. The barbarism has gone completely, gone absolutely mad. I think there are 3 basic reasons of some of this level of ignorance. The first one would be the natural one, ignorant, when the person is keen to learn. and will ask the relevant questions, and has got the confidence to question things. And that is part of the learning. And of course, in ZANU-PF, you're not allowed to question anything. And so you never learn anything. But at least somebody like that would be receptive to knowledge. That is the normal person. The second is what the cartoon character Homer Simpson describes as, if you try to educate me, when you push in new stuff, old stuff come out the other end. And so he never gets to learn anything. And that is, of course, most unfortunate. But I think the worst kind of ignorance, which is what is affecting the people in Zimbabwe, is the kind of ignorance where the person thinks they know. They've been brainwashed to think they know when they don't. And the kind of brainwashing that we see in Zimbabwe is literally somebody has had their brain taken out so that they are no longer capable of thinking for themselves. And the decades of political violence, threats, intimidation, stifling debate, stifling all political discourse has really taken the brain out of most of our people. And now they do as ZANU-PF tells them. And unfortunately, this culture is going to be very difficult to end. Because most of these individuals have benefited from the status quo and are therefore not receptive to open discussion. In fact, some of them are downright hostile to it. The young man we saw there, he is convinced that he's doing the right thing, the patriotic thing. And ZANU-PF has brainwashed them into believing that anyone of the opposition, he is a puppet of the whites seeking regime change. And therefore then that's a license to abuse them. Even the state institutions like the police and the judges have all been brainwashed to the point where if you are a victim of political violence in Zimbabwe, it is quite normal that if you were to report it to the police and it is found that you are from the opposition, the police will at best do nothing. At worst, they will arrest you and accuse you of disturbing the peace. And of course, the reason why the police and other state institutions are failing the people is very simple and very clear. ZANU-PF has bribed all the top officials in those institutions so that now they serve ZANU-PF and not the state, not the people. The corruption in Zimbabwe has reached a level where the ruling elite are incredibly rich. Recently, it has been in the papers, and the wealth of Grace Mugabe, the late dictator's wife, has been splashed on the pages. And their net worth is reckoned to be US $5 billion. Her daughter, Bonam Mugabe Chikore, is going through a divorce with her husband. And the couple is believed to have as many as 21 farms. And these are really big farms. 17 Porsche cars, properties in Zimbabwe, 20 or so of them. And God knows what else in terms of jewelry and other assets, cash and so forth. Their net worth is maybe 2 to 3 billion US dollars. The rich in Zimbabwe have become incredibly rich. And yet the millions of ordinary people have become incredibly poor, desperately poor. Many people cannot even afford a decent meal. And when you've got so many people who are desperately poor, of course, those with the money can bribe them to do anything. So some of these youths would have been poorly educated, and he gets paid even 200 US dollars to help campaign for the party. That is a fortune to him. Here is somebody who has never worked all his life, and to suddenly find himself with 200 US dollars, that is a fortune. And who would say no to that? And of course, if you hire up the police or the judiciary and so forth, your payoff is even better. It is believed, well, it is reported that some of the directors in the CIO who are heavily involved in the coming elections have been paid 230,000 US dollars as a one-off payment called the housing allowance. And we know the reason why they got that. Others, like chiefs, have received cars, and they're having their rural homes built at government expense. And so the list goes on and on. Headmen, ZANU-PF youths, war veterans, and so forth. They are all benefiting from some of these looted properties, looted wealth. In a country where the hospitals in the whole area, in the whole district, you'll find the clinic is so poorly equipped. The schools are closing down and so forth. The regime has got money to pay the headman, the chief, the ZANU-PF youths, and yet cannot keep schools well supplied and pay the nurses. That is the reality in Zimbabwe. That is the political reality in Zimbabwe. And it all emanates from this point where the regime has really brainwashed the people to the point where they've stopped thinking for themselves. And it's not only the youths, of course, the opposition. I think some of our opposition are utterly useless. Indeed, in fact, they are the ones who are helping to keep ZANU-PF in power. They're so corrupt and incompetent. The people risked life and limb to elect the MDC on the promise that they will implement the democratic reforms to stop the rigging of elections. Alas, after 23 years, 5 of which in the GNU, MDC have not implemented even one meaningful reform. We're talking of the political violence here. MDC are the ones, and now Triple C are the ones who are insisting on participating in these elections without reforms. Everybody saying, why are you doing that? I think we all know the answer to that. ZANU-PF is offering a few gravy train seats for those who participate. Last November, Mnangagwa increased, sugar-coated that attraction by offering MPs US 40,000 housing allowance, they called it. On paper, they're supposed to pay it back, but in practice, we all know that those MPs never pay it back. And if you get elected in Zimbabwe as an MP, you get US $60,000, a car allowance. And then comes the generous salary and even more generous allowances, which will all be, of course, tax-free. And no wonder why everybody fights to be elected into public office. It has become the one sure ticket to a meal in Zimbabwe, where unemployment has been up to 90%. Being a politician is the only employment where you're guaranteed to make a fortune. And so it's cutthroat. The opposition know ZANU-PF cannot afford to have a clean sweep. They have got to give up a few of the seats so that they can create this impression that Zimbabwe is a healthy and functioning multi-party democracy. And as long as those seats are offered as paid, they will participate. So this is the reality that we are facing in Zimbabwe. It's most unfortunate. How are we going to get out of this? I think with so many people who have been brainwashed, it really is going to be a serious challenge. With the economy in the mess it is in, ZANU-PF has the upper hand because it has the money to pay off these people. You're paid not to think. You do as you are told, and the regime will look after you. Whether it is in the common interest, in the long-term interest of everybody, or even yourself, you are not paid to think. So it is most unfortunate that this is the reality in Zimbabwe. But we can break this cycle by denouncing it now. And I think we should do it now before the elections. And we should denounce the opposition for participating in a process that they know is flawed. And that they know by participating, they're giving the regime, or at least the regional body, SADC, the excuse to grant ZANU-PF legitimacy. That is the problem we have in Zimbabwe. But we denounce the process now because it is flawed. How can you have a meaningful, free, fair, and credible election when you don't even have something as basic as a voter's roll, a verified voter's roll? How can the opposition keep on participating in a process which they know is flawed? And knowing that by participating, they're giving the regime legitimacy. And they're only doing it out of greed. I think with those two arguments, we can show, particularly SADC, that this election process is flawed. The opposition has got no political credibility, and it is absurd that ZANU-PF should be granted legitimacy from such a process. That is, in my view, our best way out of this mess. If ZANU-PF is denied legitimacy, it will be forced to go back to a situation we were in 2008, where we needed a government of national unity. Only this time, we'll see to it that the government of national unity is composed of people with the ability and the political will to implement the democratic reforms to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. That is our ticket out of this mess. Participating in the process will only give ZANU-PF legitimacy. And once they've given them legitimacy, the brainwashing will continue. We are not going to stop it by participating. We're going to stop it by not participating and protesting that this is not a legal and democratic election process. I think we should seriously look and think about it. I think there is a way out. Yes, I agree that people have been brainwashed to the point where they can't think. But this is the time when probably we need to seriously start reviewing, look in the mirror, and think for ourselves. How are we going to get out of this mess? Because allowing ZANU-PF to do the thinking for us is the worst thing we can possibly do. These are individuals who do not think themselves. How can they do the thinking for us and themselves? All they want is to continue looting and drag us deeper and deeper into this abyss. We need to change this system, and it is within our power to change it. Food for thought.